Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. So, guys, in case you missed it, there was a new executive order, and this was on coordinating national resilience to EMPs, electromagnetic pulses. And so, this is basically the White House press release right here. So, you guys could go through it and look at it. I'll have all the links for you. This really has caused a buzz. Many, in a positive vein, saying, hey, this is good. We need to be prepared. And, there's nothing wrong with ever being prepared. And then others think that, this is a foreshadowing, or that there's really real threats out there that could be happening even shortly, perhaps. So, as you see here, this is out of the Washington Times. President Trump has ordered federal government agencies to harden the nation's infrastructure against potentially devastating attacks by nuclear bomb-produced EMP, or electromagnetic pulse. The federal government must foster sustainable, efficient, and cost-effective approaches to improving the nation's resilience to the effects of EMPs. Mr. Trump stated in an executive order signed on Tuesday. An EMP is produced from nuclear blasts, special electronic weapons, or solar storms, and can damage or disrupt critical infrastructure. The order notes that a high-altitude EMP can be set off by a nuclear detonation at about 24 miles above the Earth or higher. Another danger is an EMP caused by the natural sun. Well, yeah, we could talk about that one. Basically a geomagnetic storm, and that's something that we are in many cases just expecting and feel is a matter of time. And so both can affect electronics over large geographic areas. The directive sets U.S. policy to prepare for EMP incidents through government-wide efforts and encouraging the private sector, which owns much of the electrical infrastructure, to adopt protective measures. The 3 U.S. electric grids are owned by private utilities that to date have been reluctant to spend money on the necessary investments to shield electric transformers and other components. So the order states that the federal government must provide warning of an impending EMP attack or geostorm and to protect, respond, and recover from those incidents. The government is now expected over the next months to begin planning and researching the needs of critical infrastructure owners to deal with EMP threats. The U.S. intelligence community will also conduct threat assessments on foreign states' efforts to develop EMP weapons. A report by a congressional commission on EMP made public in January found that several nations, including China and Russia, are working on nuclear weapons designed to produce super EMP waves capable of destroying electronics from computers to electric grids over hundreds of miles. Nuclear EMP attack is part of the military doctrines, plans, and exercises of Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. And for a revolutionary new way of warfare against military forces and civilian critical infrastructures by cyber, sabotage, and EMP, the report stated. The nuclear-powered electronic warfare has been called blackout warfare because of its effects on electronic devices. A high-altitude EMP strike could be conducted without producing any blast effects. Potential adversaries understand that millions could die from the long-term collateral effects of EMP and cyber attacks that can cause protracted blackouts of national electric grids and other life-sustaining critical infrastructures. Federal agencies under the presidential order will collaborate on information sharing with the private sector. For the Pentagon, the Defense Secretary is charged with developing warning systems for EMP attacks that will affect weapon systems, military operations, and national defense. EMPs pose a potential threat to our nation's critical infrastructure, and this executive order will advance our national goal of increased resilience across all infrastructure sectors, said Homeland Security Secretary Kristen Nielsen. And, this is interesting that's coming in this timing. And there are several other articles here I have links for you guys. You could see the difference in opinion somewhat where Some people are very, very happy about this. Finally, a presidential EMP order that may save American lives. And others taking more neutral stance. Trump signs the first directive to prevent EMP attacks against the U.S. And the U.S.'s latest action against potential EMP attack. And like it said, one of the things that's interesting is the fact that it's so high up that it's not like it's destroying everything below it. It's an energy wave. And we've had quite a few hints, well, not even hints, but we know that this is on the radar. And this is the PDF from Department of Homeland Security, and I did a video about this that you could still find up, and it is the President's National Infrastructure Advisory Council, and this one's surviving a catastrophic power outage. And this came out in December 2018. It's 94 pages long. If you guys haven't seen it, I'll have the link for you. And, this is a shorter version. And again, surviving a catastrophic power outage, quarterly business meeting from December, again, off of Homeland Security itself. So, how potentially devastating is this type of thing happening? And also just the fact that, it could happen because of warfare. It could happen because of active terrorism, basically. Or it could happen from perhaps natural sources as well. As we've talked about what Ed Dames, the remote viewer who used to work for the government, calls the kill shot, which he says is going to be a massive basically a massive energy burst from the sun that's going to take down the whole grid and everything. And we know that that is something that they are concerned about, and we're in that time frame with the magnetosphere going down that we're becoming more and more vulnerable. So when the sun does wake up, there are so many people that are in this field, so many YouTubers with really good knowledge, and there's so many out there like Adapt 2030 and Suspicious Observers, and just so many out there that have talked about this. Cliff High, with the web bots, and it goes on and on and on as far as people that have covered this and talked about this at length. And it's a real risk. It's something that's really a danger out there. And perhaps the government is way more aware of what is already coming, and this is their way of leaking it out to us, preparing us. And so, what would happen if we lost the grid? And we've talked about this before, and this is out of the Washington Examiner. New EMP warning, the U.S. will cease to exist. That's pretty strong right there. 90% of population will die. And right off the bat, many people say, well, shoot, we didn't have a grid when, our ancestors came here. You go back a couple hundred years and there was no grid at all. There were, wasn't even really gas lamps if you go back a little bit, farther there. We could survive, yeah, but it's a different world now, and it's packed with a ton of people. That's part of it too, as well. And so many people depending on it. And, as we see here, there's a lot of things going on. And there's a lot of reasons why, it could be so damaging and so deadly. And at a time when the military is starting to take the potential for an attack on the national electric grid more seriously, a new declassified report is warning of an electronic world war launched by Russia, Iran, North Korea, and China that could wipe out North America, Europe, and Israel. With ease and using a primitive nuclear weapon, a new axis of these aggressive nations, and this is them speaking, could black out the Western world, dismantle all electricity and electronics, and water and food supply, and lead to the millions of deaths in America. 9 of 10 Americans are dead from starvation, disease, and societal collapse. The United States of America ceases to exist, warns the report. declassified. So this was a classified report, and that has been declassified by recently decommissioned U.S. Commission to Assess the Threat of the United States from EMP Attack. And the report was written by Peter Vincent Pry, and we've talked about him before. And it revealed EMP war plans drawn up by Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, and even ISIS. And in a nuclear EMP attack scenario and combined armed cyber warfare, Price said that the Russians have called EMP a revolution in military affairs. And he explained it this way to the Washington Examiner. This new warfare uses cyber viruses, hacking, physical attacks, non-nuclear EMP weapons, and a nuclear EMP attack against electric grids and critical infrastructures. It renders modern armies, navies, and air forces obsolete. It paves the way for asymmetric warfare by small nations and terrorists. And Price said the U.S. is an easy target because virtually everything, military and civilian, relies on computers. And even the Pentagon uses civilian internet. Ours is the most technologically advanced society and therefore the most susceptible to attack. And look at that again, this statement. Pentagon uses civilian internet. And so let's just go right over here. Russia wants to cut itself off from the global internet. And, we talked about this earlier, and I hinted in another video that perhaps this is part of the bigger plan. They want to cut themselves off because they want to be totally self-reliant. And perhaps already in the plans is taking out the grid and taking out the internet by various means. And so they want themselves to be completely isolated from it so that they will be unaffected by whatever it is that is done, to bring the grid down and to take down the internet. So just throwing that out there as just something to think about, because we've had so many of these things coming out in such a short period of time. And we've also seen a lot of both the Russian and the Chinese ability to bring subs in very close to the U.S. and using these new hypersonic missiles that can strike so quick, you wouldn't really have time to react. And so, is this all what's really part of the plan? And I'm just throwing that out there for you guys. Because, it's best to be prepared. As we see, all these new articles, and there's a brand new one today out, Scientific American. Russia's new nuclear missile squeeze response time. As treaties end, Russia focuses on hypersonic weapons that could tighten the noose on current U.S. defenses. And both the U.S. and Russia last month pulled out of that intermediate range nuclear forces treaty, a Cold War era pact that prohibited land-based ballistic or cruise missiles with ranges between 311 and 3,420 miles. That agreement limited just one class of weapons, but it's not the only accord poised to end. The much broader New Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty, New START, will expire on February 5th next year unless both parties agree to extend it, which they may not do now. And so the New START limits the numbers of missiles that the U.S. and Russia deploy, with an eye towards reducing the overall number of nuclear weapons in the world. Without it, for the first time since '72, there would be no limit to how many warheads either nation can build and deploy. And as tensions rise, both countries are looking to modernize their nuclear weapons. And Russia in particular is teasing terrifying new missiles that, if they work, could bypass the U.S.'s elaborate system of ground and satellite-based defenses. The Russians really hate missile defense, said Jeffrey Lewis, a nuclear policy expert and professor at Middlebury Institute of International Studies, Monterey, California. They really don't like the possibility that they might be outmatched technologically, so there's a whole battery of Russian programs, from doomsday torpedoes to nuclear-powered cruise missiles to hypersonic reentry vehicles to anti-satellite weapons. And last year, President Putin unveiled 6 new weapons during a governmental address. The most impressive, according to nuclear experts, were the avant-garde hypersonic glide vehicle, the nuclear-powered cruise missile Skyfall, and the RS-28 Sarmat intercontinental ballistic missile. These three are the crown jewels in Russia's aggressive new nuclear policy, capable, according to Putin, of circumventing U.S. missile defense systems. Currently, American defenses are designed to knock an incoming nuke out of the air before it can hit its target, but this was already a complicated and difficult task. I mean, think of trying to shoot a bullet with a bullet. That's pretty tough. Before the development of hypersonics. And although Russia's new weapons sound frightening, none has actually been developed yet. Well, that's what they think. But I've heard other sources saying that's not the case. This is saying they may be ready in the next year or two, but none are fully operational. We'll see. We'll see. But this is something that could be used to just make it so that there would not be a response time. And so you just have to wonder. And one of the other reasons why it would be so deadly, in the case of an EMP attack, obviously, chaos and looting, and we see how people unfortunately respond to these things. There are so many that instead of working together, they just use it as a chance to go crazy. And that's a sad state of humanity, but we have to recognize that for all the people out there that are so loving and compassionate and will do everything they can out of the bottom of their heart to be good Samaritans towards others and help others in the case of an emergency, there are others that have darker energies within them that will look to just create chaos and just thrive off of chaos, unfortunately. And so this is something to be aware of. And so with this too, one of the spots that they would likely target would be an area that could hit the whole country. So if you guys remember, and many of you probably won't, but back there, I believe it was February of 2018, when I had Asia on the show, and Asia is an intuitive, and she's a friend, and she had said that she had the impression of an EMP attack on the U.S. that was going to happen later on. And all things, especially when you get predictions, they're so hard to time down time-wise. And we know that. We were talking about Edgar Casey's predictions and how he was off 20 years in many cases, or longer. But we do see the things that he talked about starting to really, really happen in earnest now. So while the predictions themselves, were inaccurate time-wise, they were still pretty accurate from what we're starting to see happen. And many things he actually did also, get the timing right. But anyway, so Asia saw an EMP event over the Dakotas, is what she had seen. And I know many people out there are feeling, well, we have seen a lot of unusual military plane activity, a lot of unusual activity that seems to be ramping up again. So this is something that we want to just be aware of. And so Pry, who wrote the report, even suggested that a nuclear explosion in the atmosphere above Omaha, Nebraska, could black out Canada, the U.S., and Mexico, all of that. And that an attack would lead to damage too broad and too deep to repair for years. And think about how long it took to bring the grid back from Puerto Rico. That was a good test and to see. So you're going to have contaminated water and contaminated air because you're not going to be able to keep the nuclear reactors running. And that's a problem. And there's nuclear reactors everywhere in this country. This is one of the big problems. Look at these. Look at all these reactors. So the eastern half of the country is totally covered. Not a good scenario. Because if the grid goes down, it's going to be a miracle if you could get all these reactors to not go into meltdown. And so, these are all potential nuclear bombs basically ready to go off. When you think about it, every one of these locations could be spewing radioactivity into the air and into the ground. And that is a scary scenario, as we see how many of them there are. So that's not a good thing, and that's a major player in this, and why it could be so hazardous. So we need to definitely take that seriously. And when we look at some of the current news, other news that pertaining to what we're talking about, we have over here uncertainty shadowing Pennsylvania's nuclear power future. And of course, remember 3 Mile Island. And so 4 decades after 3 Mile Island became shorthand for America's worst commercial nuclear power accident, there's a push to keep it open, according to reports. And let's hope not. I mean, I just want to leave it at that. We need to shut these things down as soon as possible. And, we need to eliminate the threat from these potentially going into meltdown in as best a way as possible for the environment. So we have the U.S. approving secret nuclear power work for Saudi Arabia. The U.S. administration has reportedly authorized U.S. companies to sell nuclear power technology to Saudi Arabia. So the proliferation keeps on going. Obviously, the people running this world don't care anything about the world or the people in it. That's pretty obvious. They just have their own egos that they're attending to, and perhaps a dark agenda as well. So U.S. Energy Secretary Rick Perry has approved 6 secret authorizations for companies to sell nuclear power technology and assistance to Saudi Arabia, according to a copy of a document seen by Reuters. So the Trump administration has quietly pursued a wider deal on sharing U.S. nuclear power technology with Saudi Arabia, which aims to build at least 2 nuclear power plants. We see what's wrong with the world, and as we said before, nothing changes. Doesn't matter who's in power. And we talked about Russia wanting to cut itself off from the internet, and another part of that is Russia's demanding 10 major VPNs censor content or face a ban. And of course, VPNs can make it look like you're in the U.S. when actually you're in Russia, and vice versa. And it's just yet another sign of what's going on. So, my friends, let me know what you think about all this. Please do share your comments. I don't want to promote fear, but yet, the powers that be have brought us 2 major wars, and 2 world wars. And it seems like there are forces that are super intent on bringing a third. And, these dark energies that run the world, they obviously don't care about life. And unfortunately, that's what we have going. So I want to thank everyone that's been going ahead and subscribing to Evolutionary Energy Arts 2, the backup channel, just in case, in this world we have to take those just in cases into mind. And as always, my friends, thumbs up, support the channel. Please do subscribe and both channels and click the bell so you get all the notifications. Different videos going up on each channel so they're not duplicates. And share. So let's wake up people and get them as prepared as possible for whatever's coming. God bless and namaste.